How's it going, everybody? I'm back. Hope everyone's doing all right. I'm just gonna do a quick review for. Oh, I always forget the name. It's such a tongue twister. Damn. All right, yeah, it's Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell. Ah, Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell. Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell by Brandon Sanderson. It's a short story. I don't know what's up with that title. I've had to reread it so many times now. I keep forgetting it. But yeah, let's get into it. I really liked it, actually. My favorite is still probably The Emperor's Soul. I think I have a couple more left after I finish Words of Radiance, and then that's about it for the short stories. So, but this one was cool. I'm looking forward to a full novel in this universe, or not in the. It's in the Cosmere, but looking forward to a full novel in this planet, this planetary system, and on this planet specifically. It's in the Trenadite system. Where are my notes? Like missing a page of notes somewhere. Yeah, the solar system is the Trenadite system, or Threnodite, however you want to say it. And the planet is Trinity that it takes place on. I'll throw up a picture somewhere of the orbit. The picture that's from the Arcanum Unbounded. This planet is pretty crazy. It's split into just two continents, and the bigger continent is just surrounded by something called the Evil. Imagine it almost like in Zelda Breath of the Wild. You know, you can always see the castle in the background and Ganon's like swarming over it. Like a dark aura. Apparently anyone, like no one's returned, everyone who's gone there. Brandon Sanderson describes it as a creeping darkness. So that's the one continent. On the other one is it's just people trying to survive. Like the story actually takes place in the Forest of Hell. I don't really know what the rest of the continent would look like, but there's fortresses set up. Like I imagine it's just like a wasteland, not like a nuclear waste or anything, but just people trying to survive, bandits and stuff. The main threat of the story are these things called shades. Anyone who dies, they get turned into a shade. It's still a mystery why it happens. It could be a spren if you've read any of the Stormlight archives, or some people say they're ghosts or spirits, but whatever. The fact is, if you die, you get turned into a shade, which is almost this Dementor looking creature that has glowing eyes. So there's rules you have to follow on the planet. If you break any of the rules, then those Dementor shades will come after you. And if they get a taste of blood, then they'll go into a frenzy and just kill everything, like just kill on sight. And these things are just everywhere wandering around. I'll try and find some pictures. They're actually kind of scary. For some reason, silver repels them. There's some safe zones where they surround it with silver. And then if these shades wander into it, then they like puts them into a different direction, but it will break the silver, so you have to constantly be repairing it. Yeah, just the entire concept of the short story was really cool to me. It reminds me of Bird Box, like a cooler Bird Box without Sandra Bullock. It has a little bit more like realistic female character in the story, but it does kind of remind me of that a little bit, of like going outside is dangerous and you've got to obey the rules, otherwise you're gonna get popped. The story starts just following these two guys having a conversation at this, like inside this inn. One of the dudes is just a drunk telling stories, and the other guy you find out pretty quickly is a criminal. They mention this character called the White Fox, which is apparently this bounty hunter. The drunk dude's telling all these stories about the White Fox and how the rules for the shades don't apply to him, and he'll find you no matter what. And the other guy's sweating bullets, and that's where you find the other important detail where he's like, well, I should be safe here, right? Because we're at Silence's way stop. No one gets attacked here, right? First it introduces Silence, who's actually the main character. Yeah, she's this older woman. She lost her husband, and they kind of describe her as like Stone Cold B with RBF a little bit. Second, just goes to show more about the world, how it's so dangerous that even criminals have these safe zones to go to. But this is where like the story really starts. It switches perspective to Silence. She goes into the back, into the kitchen, and she like immediately breaks character. She starts panicking. And this is where you meet her daughter, William Ann. She's 14 years old. And then she has this other girl that she's taking care of named Sabruki. She's 8 years old, and she's kind of crazy. She witnessed her entire family get murdered, and Silence took her in, found her and took her in. And so she's got some issues. Her memory is weird. She remembers just specific details. When Silence first got her, she was just staring blankly at walls forever and like wouldn't talk or anything. So it took Silence a long time to bring her out of her shell, kind of help her recover. Obviously suffering some trauma. Oh, and she like cleans obsessively. Probably just like a coping mechanism. But anyways, yeah, Silence goes into this back room and she's panicking and she tells William Ann, she's like, hey, go grab the book. I hope these guys didn't notice that I recognize them or something. Not the guys that were talking, but there's actually another group that was in the inn that you just hear about in this scene. Anyway, she tells William Ann to grab this book that has all these photos of criminals. The criminal that they're after that was in the inn was this dude named like Charleston or something. Sorry, his name was Chesterton. He's like this rapist murder dude. So this is where you kind of find out more about Silence and the reality of the situation. This is what she does for survival. She has this safe zone where criminals can come into. This is going to be heavy spoilers for the story. I kind of put it together there that she is the White Fox. You find out later, we'll talk about it. It's a little more complicated than that. Or there's just a little more to it, a little bit of a twist. You find out she's struggling with money, and it's a necessity right now for silver, for survival. Yeah, she's worried that any of the criminals will realize that all of the ones that got captured all visited her way stop right before. Stressful life on top of the dangers of the world. You kind of get some other details of William Ann, I think, too. She's obviously of age now, kind of, to start helping with this stuff. So she starts putting together this poison for the criminal that they're going to go after, for Chesterton. Another important thing mentioned in the scene is you find out that Silence is a Four Scout, which is basically, well, her grandparents were kind of the pioneers coming to that continent. So the three of them are all getting things together. Sabruki's like cleaning or taking care of the pigs, and William Ann is working on this poison. And then Silence hears this voice behind her, and it's this dude that walks in, which you find out, his name's Theopolis. You find out he's the tax collector. Yeah, he basically acts like a douche throughout the entire story. I'm not exactly sure. It seems weird that there's a tax collector, kind of, to me, in this like chaotic of a world. Silence is behind on some payments and things. He notices the poison they're making. He makes a guess at what it is. He's like, oh, this is wet leek sap, which I guess glows at night if you shine light on it. So they were going to use it to follow the trail of the bandits. This little bitch, Theopolis, he hands Silence a writ of seizure, basically saying, if you don't pay me, I'm going to take your house, or take the way stop. But she needs someone to turn in the bounties to. That's the only reason she deals with them. He mentions that there's this shade protecting the area of a shade of her husband, basically, which you'll see. It'll be important later. And then he goes on to almost insult William Ann, her daughter, and Silence kicks him out, thankfully. This is where you have a moment with Sabruki, where she kind of has a freak out moment. So when Silence turns around the corner, Sabruki's there holding a crossbow, just like blank face, looking crazy. You actually learn a bit more about Chesterton, the criminal here. I didn't realize that he actually murdered Sabruki's family. That makes a lot more sense. But Silence, she calms her down. She does end up shooting the bow, but it like misses Silence by a hair and breaks a window. After the scene, Silence starts packing things to get ready for the night. But she's next to this hearth, which you find out her grandmother started up. She risked her life to start it, and it's been burning ever since. That's the next rule, is if you light any fire, the shades will come after you. So I guess it was super dangerous to light this fire, and they've just kept it going ever since. And here she actually does mention a third rule as well, which is don't run at night. Those are the 3 simple rules, she says. No blood, no fire, and no running at night. Yeah, Silence, she's packing her things. She brings with her a pouch of silver, an oil lamp, which she said she's only going to save for emergencies because you can't light fires. She said she'll only use it if someone else lights a fire first. And then she brings a gunpowder keg, I guess, just for safe measure, just in case. And her daughter, William Ann, notices this, and she's like, Mom, what are you doing? She takes a closer look at William Ann and notices she's like dressed to go out. She basically just says, I'm going with you. She's like, there's no way you can take on 5 men yourself who are only half drugged. And she convinces her to take her with her. Because Silence, it seems like, she learned a lot of what she knows from her grandma doing this. So now she's like, okay, William Ann is of age. So yeah, this is where the action starts. You've got Silence and William Ann going into the night with all the shades and danger outside to follow these bandits and kill them. Here, when they step outside, you learn a bit more about the shades, just kind of how they look. But apparently you can tell how old they are by how human-like they look. And then you can also get an idea of just how many there are out there in the woods. If right when they leave the way stop, they're already noticing a lot of shades around. You also find out that the shades, they're still there during the day, you just can't see them. But they're just more dangerous at night. And Silence gives William Ann kind of a prep talk. You need to be extremely careful and you need to be afraid. Don't be excited about this. Super dangerous. So yeah, Silence and William Ann follow the bandits out and they bring these burlap sacks. It's so brutal. They drugged these guys with a low dose of some weed or something. So they're all groggy and asleep at their camp. I think there's like 4 guys. So the first 2, they absolutely murder. They throw a sack over the guys' heads and smash them with a hammer. And they have these special designed sacks so the blood doesn't seep out and alert the shades. I think when they murder the second guy is when the third guy awakens. So Silence run overs and starts strangling him. And then the 4th guy gets up and she's like, oh no, that's Chesterton. He starts running and she's afraid he's gonna alert the shades because if the shades come after him, they'll just turn him into dust and she won't be able to turn him in and get the bounty. So she puts the 3rd guy down she was strangling and starts chasing after Chesterton. So Silence takes down Chesterton and starts beating him with the hammer. And she quickly, he's like kind of begging for his life. It's all so brutal. She wraps his head around with her sweater and then she starts yelling to William Ann. She's like, hey, I need a sack now. And the blood seeping through the sweater. Brandon Sanderson's mentioning also of what all the shades are doing. He's like, oh, their figures are darkening, their eyes are starting to light up, they're kind of like gathering around, getting attention. And then finally, William Ann shows up with the sack. They wrap it around his face, and then Silence has to bash his face in with the rock to finally finish him off after smashing him with the hammer in the head twice. So the entire scene is very intense. Silence starts having these flashbacks of this night that happened with her grandma. It was, I think, the night that her grandma died, and she sent Silence running. So I think she was kind of thinking about doing the same with William Ann and dying. But luckily, all the shades start to calm down. And at this moment, Silence, she remembers the 3rd guy that she didn't finish. And she turns around and William Ann's like, I took care of it. She ended up having to strangle him with her own hands. So yeah, they load up the bodies and then they're going through some of the luggage, looking for any silver or anything that the bandits had. And this is where they hear a ruffling in the forest, ruffling of some leaves. A group of 8 people come rolling through. The leader of this pack is some douchebag named Red Young. He's like, wow, my reports were right. Some random forest dwellers took care of these bandits. I've been tracking them for months. Thank you for doing my work for me. So yeah, basically they just got ransacked. They get their bounty jacked from this group of people. Worst thing that could happen, worst timing, after all that work especially. Yeah, Silence actually pulls a shiv out on Red Young, and she's like, you better give me a quarter at least of what the bounty's worth. And he's like, fine, I'll give you a quarter. And then they take off. William Ann is like, are you serious? A quarter? That's it? As soon as those guys leave, Silence is like, no, we're getting the bodies back, don't worry. So yeah, they plan on cutting off this group of people at a place called the White Span, which is a road that's just has tons of mushrooms. You'll see from the picture, I'll probably put it in the beginning of this video, or I'll throw it in here again. I don't really know what the significance is of the mushrooms, to be honest. I think it just looks cool or something. They plan on using the gunpowder keg to set a trap. Since it's technically not them setting off the trap, that they'll be okay from the shades. Unless it draws blood, then the shades are just gonna go crazy anyways. These guys, they creep up. Silence and William Ann are just hiding in the bushes, and one of the horses steps on it finally. Then all of a sudden there's this huge explosion. No one gets like hurt, but it just causes chaos and everyone's moving around frantically. And the shades start swarming around everyone. Silence grabs Willie Mann and they run out to go grab the body, Chesterton's body. And then one of the dudes gets murdered by a shade. You see what happens, like these black tendrils go through everywhere in his skin. His face shrivels into his skull, and they're just kind of moving away with the body as everyone's just freaking out. Silence starts having like flashbacks about her grandmother. She tries to send Willie Mann away. Almost called her Anne-Marie. Silence actually starts fighting these shades. You can only fight them with silver. It's safer basically to fight than it is to run, because if you run, they'll chase you and kill you, or it alerts their attention even further. You just got to do like quick motions, eviscerate them. So she takes down one of the shades, and then the other one grabs her arm. She loses her arm, like starts shriveling up, getting sucked down to the bone. She starts looking around to see if Willie Mann got away. Willie Mann comes back with the pouch of silver and just dumps a whole bunch on her arm that got touched. And it starts recovering the arm, but Silence in her head, she's like, oh man, she just wasted a lot of silver. She tries gathering up as much as she can off the ground, and then they start going home. Silence is getting really tired, so she sits down for a moment and asks Willie Mann for some water. And there's no reply. So she looks towards Willie Mann and young Red. He has her with a knife to the throat, and he starts demanding silver from Silence. But then all of a sudden a crossbow bolt comes out of nowhere and hits the bandits. And his knife draws blood on Willie Mann. And then all of a sudden all the shades just surround them. Oh yeah, another thing is the bandit, when he comes back, his face is all like half dissolved. Imagine him like Bane or something. And in his like defense, he throws Willie Mann through a shade, and she basically, it's like almost an insta-death. Her entire body starts shriveling and like turning into a skeleton. He gets murked super fast. Silence, she runs in, gets Willie Mann. She doesn't have enough silver on her to save her. She can't think of what to do, so all she does is create a circle of the silver powder around them to try to protect them for like the last few moments. And they're super close to home. That's it, it's over. She's having all these flashbacks with her grandma still. She looks ahead on the ground and there's a twig. It just looks weird. And she notices the crossbow bolt, the silver crossbow bolt, the same bolt that Sabruki shot earlier that went through the wall or through the window. It doesn't say what happens after that, but the next scene is Silence bursting through the doors to her kitchen. She just dunks all the silver powder she has into some water and starts trying to feed it down Willie Mann's throat. She blacks out. The next scene, Silence wakes up. And they had like the servant I didn't mention earlier because he's only vaguely brought up in the beginning. I don't know if he's a servant, he just works for them. But she wakes up looking at him and he's carrying like a jug of water with the silver powder. Yeah, she looks over at Willie Mann and she's alive. She's just, her hand is probably gonna have to get cut off. And she has like all these gray spots all over her skin from where the shades attacked her. But she's alive. They had to leave the body behind, the bounty. And so she's like, oh, the bounty is definitely gone by now. The shades, like the body was too fresh. The shades definitely got to it. Silence is in the kitchen being like, oh no, like we owe Theopolis money. He's going to come in and take the waste stop from us after all this work is all for nothing. All of a sudden the door opens and Theopolis is there. She looks down and realizes he has the blue glowing substance on his feet from the sap. She starts having more and more realizations that he was really a part of like many of the things going on. So he goes after her, grabs her. She goes and grabs a key and starts to unlock a door that's behind her. He's like, oh, you're grabbing for a weapon? You think I don't know what's in that pantry? And then she's like, that wasn't the pantry. So he looks back at the door and there's a little shrine in there, her grandmother's shrine, and there's silver lining the entrance to it. So he's kind of like putting two and two together, starts panicking. And the shade forms behind him with red eyes. The shade absolutely eviscerates Theopolis finally. It's enraged, but it doesn't attack Silence. Yeah, Silence has the silver crossbow bolt on her and kind of like starts pushing the shade back towards the closet, and then she locks it back in. It skips to the next scene, which is her going through Theopolis's cavern that he had, and she starts just ransacking his stuff. She finds the body of Chesterton. She finds her grandmother's knife that she accidentally left behind. She finds just silver everywhere surrounding the area that she can harvest. She starts thinking, okay, now I gotta find a new place to turn in the bounties though. And that's kind of how the story wraps up. It goes back to the people in the beginning scene, the drunk and the other guy, and they're kind of going back and forth again. But that's really where the the main story ends. It's a pretty satisfying ending. Everyone survives. Her daughter probably loses her arm, but considering what could have happened, it's a pretty good ending. All right, I gotta start wrapping this up. But yeah, this was a pretty good short story. It was really intense for how short it was. It was only 40 pages, I think, about in my ebook version. So yeah, you could read it in like an hour or two. Definitely suggest reading it. You don't have to read anything else before it. It's pretty much a standalone story. There's no tie-in with the Cosmere yet. So yeah, I think I would definitely suggest, if you're like new to reading fantasy, or you don't read that often, I think this would be a good story to pick up for you, because it's just so short and very action-packed. You get the strong female protagonist, 3 strong female protagonists, and a satisfying ending with Theopolis, who's an absolute prick. Anyways, guys, this turned into more of just a summary than it did any sort of review. It's just such a short story, but whatever. If you haven't read it, hopefully at least you enjoyed my explanation of it. I might do one more Brandon Sanderson and then review like The Name of the Wind or something. I've been reading mostly Brandon Sanderson, but I would like some variety. And then I don't think I'm going to do Words of Radiance in parts. I'm already like on part 3. It's too late for that. I could do like a halfway point review, but I'll just wait until I finish it. I still have a lot more books to review, so yeah, thank you guys to anyone who watched this far. I'm trying to pick up the pace with the editing and recording and stuff. I feel like just the more I do it and the quicker I get it out, the better I'll get at it. So, but yeah, thank you guys, and I'm gonna head out. See you guys in the next video. Later.